Love them or hate them, pre-recorded cassettes were once a big deal, and for a moment in the 1980s, outsold vinyl. Disliked and discarded by most who grew up with them, cassettes are now being embraced by a new generation, in one of the unlikeliest comebacks in the history of music. I'm Andrew from Parlogram, and in this video, I'll show you what happened when I resurrected my beloved 90s Walkman and put it to the test against these brand new machines. And the results might surprise you. Over the years, I've had a real love-hate relationship with cassettes. Working in a record shop in the mid-1980s, I witnessed firsthand when, just before the introduction of the CD, pre-recorded cassettes were outselling vinyl albums, or records as we called them back then. We in the shop always looked down on the pre-recorded cassette, and you can count on the fingers of one hand those that I bought from new. For me, cassettes were about creating, not consuming. I would buy blank tapes by the dozen to record music from my friends, the radio, and of course mixtapes for my Walkman. When I lived in Prague in the late 90s, this Walkman and I were inseparable, but everything changed when I moved away in 2000, including my habit of listening to cassettes. However, a couple of years ago, a strange compulsion encouraged me to buy a large collection of vintage pre-recorded cassettes, which caused me to re-evaluate my relationship with the format. So before we go any further, let me introduce you to some of those. This case is divided up solely by record company, and each record company had their own colour scheme. For example, on the left here, you've got EMI, which had a gold spine. Let's just take one out and have a look. This, for example, is The Byrds. Early EMI cassettes had yellow paper labels. This one is from 1973. And the little J card had this lovely dusty gold finish and had a date code on it as 7305, which was May 1973. Nothing much inside this one. Then of course we have all the other famous EMI artists in here. We've got Paul McCartney, Red Rose Speedway, also from 1973, and also from that same year, Dark Side of the Moon. This again is on the yellow paper label with the gold J card. This has a date code on it of April 1973. Actually got two of those. There's another one here. Also Paul McCartney. This is the second issue of his solo cassette, first solo album cassette. We've got Deep Purple and lots of others. Wizard, Stevie Wonder, Geordie, even the Johnny Keating Space Experience. The pink column is Island. For example, here's quite a rare one. As you can see, the cover is just text, no picture. Pink Island cassette, paper label. And inside on the card, you've got the front, just pink and white, and you do actually get a picture of the band inside. This column, yellow, is all the cassettes which were under the Decca Polygram Phonogram umbrella. My favourites being Scott Walker, Scott Walker 1, Scott 1, Scott 2, Scott 3 with an unusual cover which was different from the album, and my favourite, Scott 4. Again, these were paper label Philips products. Yes, I have been playing this one recently, which is why it isn't rewound. Cover, very simple J card affair. And you do get an exclusive picture of Scott on the card there, which didn't appear inside the album. Video on this album coming up very soon. In this section, we've got all the Warner's cassettes. So for example, right from, there we go, Warner Atlantic, Led Zeppelin, there we go. This is a red label, paper label cassette, 1971. This is Genesis Foxtrot on this sort of brown label. I've also got in the collection a couple of still sealed tapes. This one, for example, is Tommy, the orchestral version, which is still sealed in its box. And there's another still sealed double cassette of Yes songs. Two cassette pack. Another interesting cassette I've got for Stones collectors is this, which is Exile on Main Street. I haven't seen this before. I've had a look around, but I can't see any. I've seen 8 tracks sometimes with this case, but this has a special, just a cardboard slipcase, which has no bottom. It's just a outer slipcase, and there's the cassette. It's that avocado green again. It's not a great quality cassette. And there's the Precision Tapes warranty. And there's the information on the inside. Of course, these now 50-plus-year-old cassettes sound nowhere near as good as their vinyl or CD equivalents, but they are great fun to play, which I do regularly on this mid-1980s Nakamichi BX300E, which does the job perfectly. As did this Walkman, for by the time Sony discontinued its cassette Walkmans in 2004, they had truly perfected portable cassette playback technology. However, the manufacturers of the new machines had to virtually start from scratch. So my question was, how do these new devices compare with this 25-year-old device? Now, as a rule, mechanical devices need regular use to keep them alive, but after a quarter of a century lying unused in a drawer, bringing this back to life was going to require a little work. So this is my original Sony Walkman, which I bought in, I think, 1998, 1999, and as you can see is a WM-EX660 Groove. Now this device runs on a gumstick battery. This is a new one, which I bought from Amazon recently, as the old one had expired inside the machine, but thankfully no lasting damage was done. But before we put that in and try and get it going, there's something else very important we need to do first. So first up, we need to take these screws out. Not going to make the mistake of losing them again. One, two. Let's come out. And this one too isn't coming out. There we go. So now we can lift this off. There we go. Now, although at first glance it looks to be in really good condition, pay close attention to this belt which runs around this pulley and around these two brass wheels. Look what happens when I move it. Yep, that's stuck Thankfully, it hasn't melted into just black goo like a lot of these belts do from this period, and it might just be a simple case of replacing it. So a quick visit to eBay yielded this, a replacement belt for the WMEX660. That's it. So what we've got to do now is get this one off and get this one on. Right, so we've got to take the old belt off, which shouldn't be too much of a problem. So hopefully we can get it off without leaving any residue behind. That seems to be off okay. Let's take it round here. Yep. Okay. And goes in there like that. Oh, snapped. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's the old belt. So yeah, that's pretty much had it. Now let's get the new one on. Let's pass it under there and around this wheel here. There we go. There we go. So it's all back together and it's all running perfectly. So let's put it back together. Right, that's put back together. I haven't put the screws in yet, just in case I have to take it apart again. Let's get the battery, which goes in here. Oh, something's happening. Something's happening. That's good. Something happened. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, we have life. Whoa, it's sort of... Stop. Didn't want to stop. Put a tape in. Oh. Ah. Okay. Yeah. So tape's in. Let's see if we have some proper action. What was the play button? That one, I think. Yeah, there he goes. Let's see what we've got. There goes the tape. Stop. Fast forward. Oh, that's fast. Let's fast forward. Yeah, fast forward is working. Rewind. Rewind is working. Right, I'll button it up now, put the screws back in and get the lid on and see if we can get some sound out of it, huh? Okay. So now, let's look at what this vintage Sony is up against. First up is a device called Risho. Now this is a cheap Chinese-made cassette player, which I bought on Amazon for €20, brand new. And this is what you get for your €20. You get a set of very low-end wired headphones, a USB-C cable for power, and the machine itself. There we go. Super USB Capture appeal sticker on it. Let's have a look inside. There's the mechanism. Let's give you a shot of the head in there. Looks like a stereo head. Let's push it out a little bit so you can see it better. On the top we've got some controls: play, stop, rewind, forward wind, direction, and something called DIR, is that? And you've got the opening switch on the side here. So that's what €20 gets you. the cheapest portable cassette player on Amazon. Next up is this FiiO CP13. Now you may have seen this in a lot of videos on YouTube because a lot of YouTubers were sent this by FiiO to review last year. Now FiiO didn't send me this, I bought this with my own money and it cost me €99 on Amazon. There you go, we've got a fancy looking quick start installation guide in Chinese, English, all the languages in there. A warning card and the player itself. This is the transparent version. There on the top we've got these chunky controls. We've got play, rewind, forward wind and stop. On the side we've got a volume control knob, power in from the USB-C and headphone port. It opens up just by flipping up the cover like that, and there's the mechanism. Let's push the head forward. It has some charge in it actually, it's starting to go. Yeah, you can see the spindle turning round. Anyway, there's the head. It looks slightly different to the one in the other machine. Everything checks out to begin with. Let's see how it sounds. So to compare these machines, I'm going to record a 60-second royalty-free music track from my computer onto cassette using my Nakamichi BX300E. And to make sure I get the best recording possible, I'm going to use this new old stock TDK SA60. I'll then play the tape on each device, starting with the Risho, then the FiiO, and finally the Sony. I'll then record each clip from the headphone output of each device into Adobe Audition on my computer, but I won't add any effects to any of them. Now you will hear the differences more clearly if you're wearing headphones, but I think they will be clear even on phone speakers. Just before we start, I must add that although the Risho player played in stereo through its low-end headphones, try as I may, I could only get a mono signal out of it with my recording cable. Still, I think the recording gives you a good idea of its overall sound. Ready? Let's go. Here's a visual representation of the reshow playback. The blue is the waveform, which indicates volume, and the orange is the spectrograph, which shows the strength of frequencies. The wider the blue waveform, the louder the volume, and the stronger the orange color, the higher the intensity of the frequency. Despite being mono, the reshow sounded okay, with plenty of detail on the top end. However, there was a significant amount of background noise from the motor throughout. This is the FiiO, which although outputted stereo perfectly, did, as you can see by the lack of orange in the upper part of this graph, was pretty low in high-end detail. The sound was, in my opinion, very average and pretty flat overall. Yes, the sound perhaps could be made a little clearer if I adjusted the heads, but that's quite difficult to do and shouldn't be necessary on a brand new product directly from the factory. The Sony, on the other hand, had a good response across all frequencies and was for me the winner by a fair margin. The only issue I heard was some wow and flutter, which is most likely the result of it being left idle for such a long time. A little silicone grease in the right places and some more playtime may free up the internals more and make it run more smoothly. So, what should you do if you're considering getting a vintage Walkman like this? And how much do they cost? Well, I found a Walkman identical to mine on ebay.co.uk, listed for £99, which the listing said was fully tested and working. The FiiO cost me the same, brand new. Let me know in the comments which one you'd rather have. Of course, buying second-hand tech of any kind does come with risks, but if you're prepared to be patient and search around, good quality machines are out there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give us a like and a sub, and let us know if you'd like to see more cassette or vintage tech on the channel. I'll be back next week with something completely different. But that's all for this time, so I'll say bye for now, and thanks for watching.